Eric here, and I'm here today to talk about what I read in October and also for Dewey's 24-hour readathon. I've decided to dub October the month of the audiobook, which you will soon learn why. So let's do it. The first book I finished in October was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This is a recent sci-fi release about a man who wakes up one day and his life is changed completely, but he's still living in the same kind of reality that he was, but his wife is no longer his wife, and his kid is no longer his kid, and he has to figure out why, basically. It was pretty good. It was really action-packed. It was a fun read. It wasn't like my favorite thing that I've read. I felt like it went on for a little too long. I was disappointed by the ending. I ended up giving it 3 stars in the end, though, and I do have a full review of this on Goodreads because I did receive a copy of this from NetGalley for review. Throughout the month of October, I read books 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 oh god, of the Dublin Murder Squad series by Tana French. I listened to all of these on audiobook. I read the first book in the series, which is In the Woods, in paperback form, and I really enjoyed it, but I have got to say, if you've been thinking about these books at all, please pick up the audiobooks. They are so well done. So I've been playing a lot of video games this month and listening to a lot of audiobooks. So in order, book 2 is The Likeness, book 3 is Faithful Place, book 4 is Broken Harbor, book 5 is The Secret Place, and book 6, which recently came out, is The Trespasser. All really good. I gave them all between 3 and 4 stars. I'm not going to go into details on any of them because they don't really follow the plot from the first book, but each book kind of takes a more minor character from the previous book, and then it's their story, which is kind of fun because you get to see characters develop throughout a series of books, which is very interesting, but you get a very different story and a different kind of crime every time. So I did all of that. I also finished My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. I was really pleasantly surprised by this. I actually really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I finished it at like 1 o'clock in the morning one night, and as soon as I finished it, I literally got out of bed to go order the second book because I had to know what happened. This book ends on a serious cliffhanger. For those of you who are not already aware, this is the first in a series called the Neapolitan novels. It follows 2 young girls and kind of their friendship over the years and how that changes as they grow up and what they're going through. I was really pleasantly surprised. I've already filmed a full review of this, which I will have up in the next week or so. Then Dewey's 24-hour readathon happened, which was super exciting. Yay! I usually film my wrap-up for Dewey's 24-hour readathon like the moment the readathon ends so that you get to enjoy me in all of my sleep-deprived glory. But this year I stayed up a lot later and got a lot less sleep than I usually do. So when 8 o'clock hit, I was like, okay, goodbye, world. And I just passed out. So I didn't get a chance to do that, and I haven't had a chance to film since then. So this is what I read during Dewey's 24-hour readathon, in no particular order. I read Saga Volume 6 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. This was good. It's definitely kind of turning things around. I wasn't super impressed with Volumes 4 and 5, so I'm really glad to see that I enjoyed this a little bit more. I read Plutona by Jeff Lemire, which is it was 5 issues, but this trade is the only trade that's going to be released of Plutona. I really enjoyed this, and I will talk about it more in my next comics wrap-up. I read a giant book of poetry. This is selected verse by Federico Garcia Lorca. This is the bilingual edition, and it's translated by like a gazillion different translators because there are different translators for different poems. So it is Spanish and English side by side. I read some of it in Spanish. I read some of it in English. I read some of the poems in both languages when I didn't understand the Spanish and then had to consult the English. I'm really shocked that I got through all of this. That was really impressive, and I enjoyed it. Federico Garcia Lorca's really interesting Spanish poet, and I'm really glad that I kind of got to dive into the depths of his work and kind of see the various types of poems that he writes. I listened to 2 audiobooks during Dewey's. I listened to Dancer by Paula Mccann. This is historical fiction about a famous Russian ballet dancer, and it was really phenomenal. I highly recommend the audiobook for this one as well. It was kind of a full cast narration. So like another one of McCann's books that I've read, which is Let the Great World Spin, this kind of jumps around in time and each chapter is told through a different character's perspective. So it was really fascinating and I really enjoyed it. I did not expect to finish the audiobook of this as fast as I did, but I was very much enthralled by it, so I highly recommend this. The second audiobook I read during Dewey's 24-hour readathon was The Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. I did not expect to love this quite as much as I did. Shonda Rhimes, for those of you who don't know, is the creator of Grey's Anatomy and Private Practice and Scandal, which I still haven't watched. She kind of wrote this book about what would happen if she just started saying yes to everything that was proposed to her. So, yes, I will go on that talk show. Yes, I will sit down and play with my child for an hour, even though I'm late for work already. Things like that. It was really wonderful and really empowering. It was also an interesting look into Shonda Rhimes' life as not only a Black creator, but as an overweight creator in the television industry and as a woman. Highly recommend it. The audiobook is read by her. Amazing. And it would be a great kind of end of the year book to get you thinking about 2017 and any resolutions you may have. I finally finished Vampires in the Lemon Grove by Karen Russell. I started reading this in like February or March, and I read like the first 3 stories and then never picked it back up, and I keep telling myself that I'm going to finish it, and I never had. This is a collection of fabulous short stories by Karen Russell. There were 1 or 2 that I was like super blown away by. The rest of the collection fell a little bit flat for me, but I have heard that this is kind of the least beloved of her work, so I'm really looking forward to picking up her novel Swamplandia and her short story collection St. Lucy's Home for Girls Raised by Wolves. I am looking forward to seeing what else she can do, and I gave the collection overall 3 out of 5 stars. So definitely not bad by any means. There are some stories that I'm going to remember for a very long time, but not my favorite either. And I also read something new, Tales from a Makeshift Bride by Lucy Nisley. This was absolutely amazing. I read this kind of in the wee hours of Dewey's readathon. It was like 4 a.m. here. Ugh. And it is a graphic memoir about Lucy Nisley planning her wedding and getting married, and it's just absolutely perfect. I related to it very heavily on a personal level, and if any of you are planning your wedding or about to get married or have recently gotten married, or even if you haven't, I highly recommend this. It's very relatable, and I am a huge fan of Lucy Nisley. Right before the end of the readathon, I fell asleep for a couple of hours, and then when I woke up, there's only like half an hour to go. So I got through half of Giant Days Volume 3. This volume is by John Allison and Max Sarin and Whitney Koger. And this was phenomenal. I'm in love with this series, and I think you should definitely pick it up. It's about a group of girls who become friends their freshman year of college, and kind of all about their freshman year of college and them kind of experiencing the world as a whole and figuring out what they want out of life. It's hilarious. It's also really poignant, and it's just really good fun. So I did end up finishing this the day after Dewey's readathon, so I read that as well this month. And then I had a really good end of the month as well. As I mentioned, I read all the Ton of French books. I also managed to finish 2 more books. I read Every Heart a Doorway by Shannon McGuire. This is a fantasy novel, tiny novel. It's the first in the series, and I hadn't heard much about it plot-wise yet. I've been kind of shielding myself because it's such a tiny book. But I've only heard really awesome things about it, so I picked it up, and it was phenomenal. I read this in one sitting. It's about a school for children who have kind of traveled to different worlds, like kind of like your fairyland world or your fantasy worlds, and have been rejected by those worlds and have had to come back and live in reality. And this woman who runs the school kind of finds these kids and collects them so that they can stay with her because they have a really hard time adjusting to reality and figuring out what happened to them. And it was wonderful. The representation in this book is phenomenal, and I highly recommend it. I cannot wait for the rest of the series. This does kind of fall on the YA lines, which for me, I was hugely surprised that I enjoyed it so much. And I would recommend it to literally anyone because the characterizations and the representation in it, and like kind of the fun fantasy element are really great. I also read my book of the month book for this month, and that was The Wonder by Emma Donoghue. Emma Donoghue, of course, is most famous for writing Room, which was recently adapted into a movie. I'm not really sure how recently, because I don't keep up with movies that much. This is historical fiction, so something a little bit different, and it is set in Ireland about 20 years after the potato famine, and a nurse who is trained under Florence Nightingale, who's a British nurse, is sent to Ireland to help keep watch over this young girl because her family claims that she hasn't eaten in 4 months, and so there's been a committee set up and rotating watches scheduled to keep like a really close eye on this girl to prove whether or not she's actually been eating. Really interesting. I think I'm going to do a full review on this because I have a lot of things to say about it, but I will tell you I gave it 3 out of 5 stars overall. So yeah, that was my October and my Dewey's readathon. I had a really great month. I read a lot of really cool things, various things, all kinds of things. Dewey's was fun as always. I always love it. And if you have any questions about any of these books or want to chat about them, let's do so in the comments, and I will see you all next time. Bye.